The relentless Arizona sun beat down on the desolate trail as Eleanor Ellsworth struggled to take another step, her parched lips cracking with each labored breath. The year was 1875, and the promise of a new life in Tucson had led her westward, but the unforgiving desert had other plans. Her vision blurred as the ground beneath her seemed to tilt and sway. The last thing she remembered before darkness claimed her was the thundering of hooves and a shadow falling across her face. Lucas O'Malley had been tracking a stray calf when he spotted the woman collapse in a heap of dusty skirts on the trail ahead. He spurred his paint horse forward, dust billowing behind them as he closed the distance. Dismounting in one fluid motion, he knelt beside her still form. Her face was flushed with heat, her breathing shallow. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest as he whistled for his horse. "Hang on, miss," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "I've got you now." The ride back to his cabin took less than an hour, but every minute felt like an eternity as he balanced her limp form in front of him. His small homestead came into view, a modest cabin with a barn and corral nestled against the foothills of the Catalina Mountains. It wasn't much, but it was his, carved from the wilderness through 5 years of backbreaking work. Lucas carried the unconscious woman inside, placing her gently on his bed. He worked quickly, removing her boots and loosening her collar before fetching water. With a damp cloth, he bathed her feverish face, noting her delicate features, high cheekbones, full lips, and lashes that formed dark crescents against her pale skin. "Come on now," he urged softly, dribbling water between her lips. "Just a little, that's it." Eleanor stirred, coughing slightly as consciousness returned. Her eyes fluttered open, a startling blue that reminded Lucas of summer skies. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze before panic set in. She tried to sit up, only to fall back with a groan. "Easy there," Lucas said, his voice low and steady. "You're safe. I found you passed out on the trail, brought you to my cabin to recover." "Who?" Her voice cracked and she swallowed with difficulty. "Lucas O'Malley, at your service." He tipped an imaginary hat. "And you might be." "Eleanor Ellsworth," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. O'Malley. I seem to have misjudged the journey." Lucas nodded, offering her more water. "Most folks do their first time crossing this stretch. Where were you headed?" "Tucson." "I have a position waiting as a schoolteacher." Lucas raised his eyebrows. "Schoolteacher? They'll be glad to have you. Town's growing faster than weeds after a monsoon." Eleanor attempted to sit up again, this time more slowly. Lucas supported her back with a gentle hand. The simple cotton dress she wore was travel-stained but well-made, her hair falling from its pins in honey-brown waves. "I should continue on," she said, though her pallor and trembling hands betrayed her weakness. "Not today, you won't," Lucas replied firmly. "You're suffering from heat exhaustion, maybe worse. Another hour out there and I might have been digging a grave instead of playing nurse." Eleanor flinched at his bluntness but nodded reluctantly. "Perhaps you're right. I'd be grateful for shelter until morning." "Until you're fit to travel," he corrected. "Could be a day or two. Tucson's waited this long for a teacher. It can wait a bit longer." As the evening approached, Lucas prepared a simple meal of beans, salt pork, and biscuits. Eleanor insisted on sitting at the table despite her weakness, maintaining a proper distance between them. Lucas respected her caution. A woman alone in a stranger's cabin had every right to be wary. "How long have you been out west, Mr. O'Malley?" she asked, nibbling at a biscuit. "Going on 8 years now. Came out after the war. Worked cattle drives for a spell before staking my claim on this piece of land." He gestured to the cabin around them. "Not much, but it's mine, free and clear." "You fought in the war?" Her eyes studied him with new interest. Lucas nodded, his expression closing slightly. Union, Illinois 83rd Infantry. My brother served with the 104th New York, she offered. He didn't come home. Their eyes met across the table in silent understanding. The war had left few families untouched, its shadow stretching even to this remote corner of the Arizona Territory. I'm sorry, he said simply, as am I for your losses, whatever they may be. That night, Lucas insisted Eleanor take his bed while he made do with a bedroll near the fireplace. Despite her protests, he was adamant. My ma would haunt me till my dying day if I let a lady sleep on the floor, he said with a crooked smile that transformed his weathered face. Eleanor slept fitfully, waking several times to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert night. Each time, she saw Lucas's form by the dying embers, his breathing deep and even. There was something reassuring about his presence, a steadiness that calmed her frayed nerves. Morning brought renewed strength, though Eleanor still felt the effects of her ordeal. Lucas was already outside when she rose, the sounds of chopping wood drifting through the open window. She straightened her appearance as best she could, grimacing at her wrinkled dress and disheveled hair. When she ventured outside, the sight before her made her pause. Lucas stood by the woodpile, axe in hand, his shirt discarded in the growing heat. Lean muscle rippled across his shoulders and back as he swung the axe in practiced motions. Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. She cleared her throat and Lucas turned, surprise flickering across his face before he quickly pulled his shirt back on. Morning, Miss Ellsworth. Feeling better? Much, thank you, she replied, ignoring the flutter in her stomach. I was hoping I might assist with breakfast preparations. Over the next 2 days, Eleanor gradually regained her strength. Lucas insisted she rest, but she found small ways to contribute, mending a torn shirt, organizing his meager collection of books, and preparing meals from his simple stores. They fell into an unexpected rhythm, learning each other's habits and preferences without needing to speak them aloud. On the evening of her 3rd day at the cabin, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Eleanor had never seen anything so beautiful. I can see why you chose this place, she said softly. Lucas nodded, his profile outlined against the fading light. First time I rode through this valley, I knew something about it felt like home. Do you ever get lonely? The question slipped out before she could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, but I've got my horses, the occasional visitor passing through. Town's only half a day's ride when I need supplies or company. Still, it seems a solitary existence. Most days I prefer it that way. His eyes met hers. But I've enjoyed your company, Miss Ellsworth. The honesty in his voice made her heart skip. As I've enjoyed yours, Mr. O'Malley. The next morning, Eleanor announced she felt well enough to continue to Tucson. Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable as he saddled his horse and a gentle mare he kept for light work. I'll take you into town myself, he said. Make sure you get there safely. Eleanor wanted to protest she'd already imposed enough, but the thought of parting so soon left an unexpected ache in her chest. Thank you. That's very kind. The journey to Tucson took most of the day, with Lucas pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the territory. Eleanor found herself laughing more than she had in years, drawn to his dry humor and straightforward manner. By the time the dusty buildings of Tucson appeared on the horizon, she was silently wishing the trail had been longer. The town bustled with activity, miners, cowboys, merchants, and families all going about their business. Eleanor felt overwhelmed after days in the peaceful isolation of Lucas's cabin. The schoolhouse is this way, Lucas said, guiding their horses down the main street. School board president is Thomas Wilson. Good man, fair-minded. Eleanor glanced at him curiously. You seem well acquainted with the town. Need to know who to trust and who to watch out for, he replied with a shrug. Makes trading and business simpler. At the modest schoolhouse, they found Mr. Wilson checking repairs on the building. His face lit up when Lucas introduced Eleanor. Miss Ellsworth, we'd begun to worry. Expected you days ago. I'm afraid I underestimated the journey, she admitted. If not for Mr. O'Malley's assistance, I might not have arrived at all. Wilson shook Lucas's hand vigorously. Much obliged to you, O'Malley. We've been desperate for a proper teacher since Mrs. Holcomb returned east. Arrangements were quickly made for Eleanor's lodging with a respectable widow named Mrs. Granger. As the sun began to set, the moment of parting could no longer be delayed. Lucas stood awkwardly beside his horse, hat in hand. Well, Miss Ellsworth, looks like you're settled now. Thanks to you, she said, suddenly finding it difficult to meet his eyes. I can never repay your kindness. No need. He shifted his weight, uncharacteristically hesitant. If you ever need anything, my place isn't far. Just follow the trail north toward the Catalinas. Perhaps I could write to you. Let you know how the school progresses. The offer surprised even her. A slow smile spread across his face. I'd like that. Don't get much mail out my way. When he mounted his horse to leave, Eleanor felt an irrational urge to ask him to stay. Instead, she watched him ride away until his figure disappeared into the gathering dusk. The following weeks were a flurry of activity as Eleanor settled into her role as Tucson's schoolteacher. The town welcomed her warmly, especially the families whose children would benefit from her instruction. The schoolhouse filled with 28 pupils ranging from 6 to 16 years of age, all eager or at least present for learning. Despite her busy days, Eleanor found her thoughts drifting off into the quiet cabin in the foothills and its solitary occupant. She wrote to Lucas as promised, describing her students and the challenges of establishing order in a classroom where some children had never held a book before. His replies were less frequent, but treasured brief accounts of ranch work, weather changes, and occasional wry observations about his livestock that made her laugh aloud. As autumn approached, bringing milder temperatures to the desert, Eleanor established herself as a respected figure in the community. She joined the church choir, attended social gatherings, and even received 2 tentative courtship inquiries from local businessmen. Yet none sparked the same interest as her correspondence with the reserved rancher. In late October, an opportunity arose to see him again. The school board organized a harvest festival to raise funds for new books, and Eleanor suggested inviting families from the outlying homesteads. Excellent idea, Miss Ellsworth, Mr. Wilson approved. The more participants, the more successful our fundraising will be. Eleanor penned a special invitation to Lucas that same evening, her hand hesitating only briefly before adding a personal note. Your presence would be particularly welcomed by the teacher, who finds town conversation lacking in certain perspectives only a man of the land might provide. The day of the festival arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, and gentle breezes that carried the scent of pine from the distant mountains. Eleanor found herself scanning the crowds repeatedly, her heart leaping at every tall figure in a cowboy hat, only to sink again when it wasn't him. By mid-afternoon, she had resigned herself to disappointment. Perhaps the invitation hadn't reached him, or ranch duties had prevented his attendance. She forced a smile as she supervised the children's games, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. Miss Ellsworth seems distracted today, Mrs. Granger commented to another woman, not quite quietly enough. Perhaps she's expecting someone special. Eleanor flushed, turning away to hide her reaction. As she did, her eyes caught on a familiar figure at the edge of the gathering. Lucas stood watching the festivities, looking uncomfortable in clean clothes that appeared rarely worn. Their eyes met across the distance, and everything else seemed to fade away. She made her way toward him, conscious of curious glances following her progress. "Mr. O'Malley," she greeted him, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "You came," said I would in my letter. He shifted awkwardly. "Though I'm not much for crowds." "I never received your reply," she admitted. "Gave it to Jenkins at the general store to deliver." "Man's about as reliable as a rattlesnake is friendly." He smiled slightly. "But I'm here now." They walked together through the festival, Lucas gradually relaxing as Eleanor introduced him to her students and their families. She noticed how he took time with each child, speaking to them directly rather than over their heads as many adults did. "You're good with children," she observed as they sampled Mrs. Fenton's prize-winning apple pie. Lucas shrugged. "They're just small people, deserve the same respect as anyone." "Is that why you never married? Never wanted children of your own?" The question was forward, but Eleanor found herself increasingly unwilling to waste time on social niceties with him. If he was surprised by her directness, he didn't show it. "Never found the right woman. Or maybe never gave myself the chance to look properly." His eyes held hers. "Until recently." Eleanor's heart quickened. "And now I'm wondering if I've been a fool living alone all these years." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities, until a group of rowdy children ran past, breaking the spell. As evening approached, musicians gathered for dancing. Lucas watched the preparations with evident discomfort. "I should probably head back," he said. "Got an early start tomorrow." Disappointment washed through Eleanor. "Of course, I understand." He hesitated, then surprised her by asking, "Unless you'd care to dance first?" The simple question delighted her more than any elaborate proposal ever could. "I would very much." Lucas proved to be a capable dancer, if not graceful. His hand at her waist was respectful but warm, his steps careful as they moved among the other couples. Eleanor was acutely aware of every point where their bodies connected, of his clean-shaven jaw and the faint scent of soap that had replaced his usual aroma of leather and open air. "You clean up nicely, Mr. O'Malley," she teased. Figured a schoolteacher deserved better than a trail-dusty cowboy at her festival. His eyes crinkled with humor. "Though it nearly killed my razor, attacking 2 months of beard." She laughed, enjoying this lighter side of him. "Your sacrifice is appreciated." As the music slowed, their steps brought them closer together. Eleanor could feel the steady beat of his heart, strong and sure like everything else about him. "I've missed our conversations," she admitted softly. "Letters aren't the same," he agreed. "No, they're not." When the dance ended, Lucas walked her to the edge of the festival grounds. The stars were emerging in the darkening sky, brilliant in the clear desert air. "Would it be improper to call on you properly next time I'm in town?" he asked. Eleanor smiled. "Entirely proper and very welcome." He nodded, seeming to gather his courage before leaning down to place a brief, gentle kiss on her cheek. "Until then, Miss Ellsworth." She watched him ride away, her fingers touching the spot where his lips had been, already counting the days until she might see him again. True to his word, Lucas began making regular trips to town. At first, he claimed practical reason supplies, business at the bank, mail to collect. But soon the pretense fell away, and it became known throughout Tucson that Miss Ellsworth was being courted by the quiet rancher from the foothills. Mrs. Granger proved surprisingly supportive, despite her initial concerns about propriety. "Better a hard-working man with land than some smooth-talking drifter," she declared. "And the way he looks at you. Well, a woman knows these things." Their courtship progressed steadily through the winter months. Lucas would arrive on Saturday mornings, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book of poetry, wildflower honey from a neighbor's hives, or once, a delicate silver hairpin he'd ridden 50 miles to purchase in Prescott. They would walk together, take meals at the hotel restaurant, or simply sit on Mrs. Granger's porch talking until the older woman pointedly mentioned the late hour. In February, during one such visit, Lucas seemed particularly distracted. They walked along the banks of the Santa Cruz River, which flowed stronger than usual after winter rains. "Something's troubling you," Eleanor observed, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Lucas stopped walking, turning to face her. "I've been offered a job. Army's looking for scouts who know the territory. Pays good, better than I make from the ranch." "That sounds like an opportunity," she said carefully, though her heart sank at the thought of him leaving. "When would you start?" "That's just it. I'm not sure I should take it." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. 5 years I've put into that land, making something from nothing. Feels wrong to leave it." Eleanor studied his face. "Is that the only reason you're hesitating?" His eyes met hers, and the emotion in them took her breath away. "No. There's you, Eleanor. Whatever this is between us, I don't want to lose it." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sounded like a caress. "And what do you think this is between us, Lucas?" He took her hands in his touch gentle despite his calloused palms. "I think it's the most important thing that's ever happened to me." The simple honesty of his words moved her deeply. "Then don't take the job, or if you must, know that I'll wait for you to return." "I don't want you to wait," he said, his voice low and intense. "I want you with me always." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small wooden box. "I carved this last week, spent more time on it than anything I've ever made." Inside lay a ring, a simple silver band with a small blue stone that matched her eyes. "It's not fancy," he apologized, "but neither am I. What I can promise is a life built together day by day, if you'll have me." Eleanor felt tears well in her eyes. "Are you asking me to marry you, Lucas O'Malley?" "I am. Probably doing it all wrong," but she stopped his words with a kiss, her first act of such boldness. When they parted, both were breathless. "Is that a yes?" he asked, a smile spreading across his face. "It's a yes," she confirmed. "Though I should warn you, I know nothing about ranching." "And I know precious little about books and teaching," he countered. "Reckon we'll learn from each other." News of their engagement spread quickly through Tucson. Most reactions were positive, though Mr. Wilson expressed concern about losing his teacher. "The school year ends in May," Eleanor assured him. "I'll fulfill my contract completely." "And after?" he asked. "After, I'll be Mrs. O'Malley," she said, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. "But perhaps not entirely lost to education. There are children on outlying ranches who need teaching too." The following months passed in a blur of preparations. Lucas expanded his cabin, adding a proper bedroom and enlarging the main living area. Eleanor collected household necessities and continued teaching, her students both excited and dismayed by her upcoming departure. They were married on the first Saturday in June, 1876, in Tucson's small church. The ceremony was simple but well attended, with ranchers, townspeople, and all 28 of Eleanor's students present. Lucas had never looked more handsome than when he stood waiting for her at the altar, his usual practical clothing replaced by a new suit that made him look almost uncomfortable. "Worth every moment of discomfort to see you as my bride," he whispered as she joined him. They spoke their vows clearly, promising to love and honor each other through all that life might bring. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared left no doubt about the depth of their feelings. The journey to their home, now truly theirs together, felt entirely different from that first desperate ride months before. Eleanor rode beside her husband rather than in his arms, but felt no less protected for it. As the cabin came into view, Lucas reined his horse to a stop. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Malley," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Eleanor took in the sight the sturdy cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, the corrals and barn, the garden newly planted with vegetables, and beyond it all, the majestic mountains rising against the sky. It wasn't the life she had imagined when she'd set out for Arizona, but looking at the man beside her, she knew it was infinitely better. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Everything I could want." Lucas dismounted and came to lift her from her horse, but instead of setting her down, he carried her toward the cabin. "Seems fitting," he explained with a grin, "considering how you first arrived here." Eleanor laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I believe I was unconscious for most of that journey. And I was terrified you might not wake up," he admitted, his smile fading. "Never been so scared in my life." At the threshold he paused, looking down at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "I thank God every day that you did." "As do I," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "As do I." He carried her inside to the home they would build together day by day as promised. The door closed behind them, opening the first chapter of their shared life. Over the years that followed, the O'Malley Ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Eleanor started a small school for neighboring ranch children, teaching 3 days a week in their enlarged front room. Lucas expanded his herd and reputation as one of the territory's most reliable cattlemen. When their first child arrived, a daughter with her father's quiet strength, and her mother's blue eyes, their happiness seemed complete. On warm evenings, they still sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Sometimes they spoke of the future, sometimes of the past, but always with the certainty that the greatest fortune either had found was not in land or livestock or even children, but in that moment of desperate need on a dusty road, when fate had brought them together against all odds. "Did you ever imagine this life?" Eleanor would sometimes ask, her head resting against his shoulder, and Lucas would always answer the same way, his arm tightening around her. "Not until I saw you. Then I couldn't imagine any other."